Hello everybody, this is the iPhone channel here. Over here, two iPhone 16es, and today I'm actually going to review the iPhone 16e to see whether or not it is actually worth it, or should you actually skip and buy something else. So why not? Let's begin. Okay guys, let's start with pricing. As you guys can see, the phone does start at $600. Yes, over here you could actually see $600 for the 128 gig variant, and for the 256 gig variant it actually starts at $700, and if you want even more storage at 512 gigs it is actually $900. I'm not even joking. In fact, the $600 MSRP is actually $100 above the original slated MSRP based on rumors at around $500. So many people are actually criticizing the iPhone 16e as being kind of overpriced, because instead of actually starting at $500 it starts at $600, and in many rumors for $500 you really only get 64 gigs of storage. And if you were to buy the iPhone 16e, you do get two color options, white and black. That's effectively reminiscent with the 3G, the 3GS, the 4, the 4S, and the 5, all of which only have a black and white color option, due to the fact the 5S does come with a gold color option. And I feel like the 16e styling is sort of reminiscent to that of the 4 and 4S a bit, because of the glass back, the camera layout, as well as the boxy design. As you guys can see, this is actually the boxy design of the 16e. And similar to the 15 and 16, as well as the Pro lineup, the iPhone 16e actually has matte glass over here. Yes, as you guys can see, this is actually matte glass, and unfortunately it is not color infused, unlike that of the 15 or 16 or the Pro series. But as you can see guys, this is actually matte glass rather than the regular glass seen on a 14 and prior lineups. One nice perk of the iPhone 16e is, unlike the regular 15, the 16e actually includes Apple Intelligence over here. As you guys can see, now Apple Intelligence is limited to the 15 Pro and the 16 series, but the 16e does have Apple Intelligence. And even though having Apple Intelligence is actually a massive improvement from that of the 14, in fact, many of the design elements on the 16e actually derive from the 14, including the notch over here. There is no dynamic island, just an old-fashioned notch up there. And this phone does have a 6.1 inch display, which is actually a Retina XDR display, aka 460 pixels per inch. And also, there's actually a much bigger battery than that of the 16. In fact, the 16e actually has a 3961 milliamp hour battery, which meant this phone does have a longer battery life than that of the 16. 400 milliamp hours more with less features means there's actually a much higher battery life on the 16e. Despite the fact the iPhone 16e does derive many of its design elements from the 14, in fact there are actually some features which are not included on 14. As you can see guys, this is actually the action button, not the ring switch button. You could actually enable or disable silent modes. And of course the new feature in town is actually the single 48 megapixel camera lens. Now the single camera could actually be found on the SE3, the SE2, as well as the 10R, and many budget phones, even those which are actually $30 like the Blueview 5 and HMD Vibe, actually have two cameras. This has a single camera, but the 48 megapixel camera is actually a 2-in-1 camera system. And one other design element is the introduction of USB-C. As you guys can see, the regular 14 only has the Lightning connector, but due to the EU mandate, Apple is actually forced to include USB-C. So hence you do actually see USB-C on the iPhone 16e. Therefore, rest in peace, Lightning. However, despite the fact this phone does support USB-C, in fact, this phone is actually restricted to USB 2.0 transfer speeds at 480 megabits per second. Remember the fact the iPhone Pro series actually do have USB 3.0, which means it could actually support upload and download speeds, aka transfer speeds of 10 gigabytes per second. The other limitation in the iPhone 16e is actually in the wireless charging sector, as the iPhone 16e does not have MagSafe charging capability of any kind, Instead, it actually has Qi wireless charging of up to 7.5 watts. Kind of unfortunate given the fact the 12, 13, and even 14 does support MagSafe charging. Another limitation even compared to that of the 12, 13, and 14 is the iPhone 16e does not have millimeter wave support nor ultra wideband support of any kind, meaning you're stuck with sub 6 GHz 5G. However, the iPhone 16e actually incorporates the new Apple-made C1 chip, which allows for battery life gains and more responsive data in more congested data networks. And what makes the iPhone 16e really better is the fact the battery is actually 400 milliamp hours bigger than that of the regular 16. So not only do you have a bigger battery life, but you also have a more optimized modem. However, despite the fact the iPhone 16e has Bluetooth 5.3, in fact, the iPhone 16e is still stuck at the old Wi-Fi 6 802.11ax standard rather than the Wi-Fi 7, which is what's seen on the iPhone 16 series. And just like what I said earlier in the video, the iPhone 16e does incorporate many of the design elements from the 14, and the screen is actually no different because this phone does have a max brightness of 800 nits in typical environments and 1200 nits in HDR settings, and this phone does have a 60 Hz display. Yes, even the 16 does have a 60 Hz display, but the 16 does have higher brightness than that of the 16e. Well, 60 Hz is kind of a bit bad in today's world, a bit pathetic because many of the budget phones such as the HMD Vive, etc., actually have 90 Hz. I'm not even joking. $30 you could actually get a 90 Hz phone. However, despite the fact the HMD Vive actually does include a 90 Hz screen, I do believe the iPhone 16e 60 Hz is actually far smoother just because the iPhone 16e does have a much better processor than that of the HMD Vive. Now, due to the fact the display on the 16e is the exact same as that of the regular 14, the iPhone 16e does miss out on its always on display. Even the regular 16 does not have an always on display. However, just like the 14, 15, and 16 lineup, the 16e does include IP68 water resistance, which means you could actually submerge this into 6 meters of water for about 30 minutes. Okay guys, let's move on to the processor, as the iPhone 16e does share the same processor with that of the regular 16, with the Apple A18 regular with 6 cores, aka 2 performance cores at 4.03 GHz and 4 efficiency cores at either 2.1 or 2.3 GHz depending on the source. And instead of having a 5-core GPU, just like what's seen on the 16, the 16e only has a 4-core GPU. I'm not even joking, 4-core GPU, but the 16e does include 8 GB of LPDDR5 RAM as well as a 16-core neural engine. So why not? I'm actually going to test the Geekbench 6 once I actually install it. But first off, let's try out the Wi-Fi speed test because of the new C1 modem over here. As you guys can see, I'm now on Ookla speed test. I'm actually going to blur the location soon. Okay guys, yes. As you guys can see, this is what the speed test actually looks like at around in the high 20s for downloads. Unfortunately, due to my Wi-Fi here. Okay guys, the results are actually in. I'm actually going to try out a different Wi-Fi network. And the results are actually in for the 5 GHz network. Okay guys, here is a Geekbench test. I'm actually going to see you guys soon. Okay guys, the results are actually in. Over here is a single core score and over here is a multi-core score. Now I'm actually going to show you guys a score comparison. As you guys can see, yes, the iPhone 16e is actually faster than that of the iPhone 15 Pro series. And it also has a better multi-core score as well. And not only that, this phone is quite responsive, despite the fact this phone only has a 60 Hz display. In fact, I can actually load many apps quite quickly, to be honest. Even on the 15 Pro Max, I could actually load apps quite quickly, let alone on this. As guys can see, you could actually load many things quickly. YouTube over here, this is actually X. And over here is actually Translate. Very snappy and spry, to be honest, in my opinion. And not only that, you could actually play some intensive games as well. And you could also use AI and actually generate some AI images and stuff. And you could even edit videos, but I do believe this phone is kind of a bit small for me to actually edit videos professionally. But you could actually edit videos because this processor is actually more than capable of editing videos. However, despite the fact the processor is quite fast, the charging speed is actually stuck at 29 watts maximum. That is faster than that of the regular 15, but still slower than the 16 series at around 45 watts. But in reality, higher wattage does mean more diminishing returns. So if you were to use a 20 watt charger on the 16E, expect 0 to 100 in about 90 minutes and about 0 to 50 in about 30 minutes. And let me also remind you guys that this phone is actually eSIM only in the US. So, rest in peace, the SIM card slots in the US at Apple. And last up, let's talk about the camera. Because this camera is actually a 2-in-1 48 megapixel fusion camera with an aperture of 1.6 and does have basic optical image stabilization, so no censorship optical image stabilization, unfortunately. But more importantly, the single camera does shoot telephoto shots. As you guys can see, this phone does have optical zoom of 2x, yes. But the unfortunate thing is, this phone does not have any ultra-wide support. So 1x is actually the maximum you could actually zoom out. As you see. However, despite some of the limitations in the ultra-wide, this phone does support smart HDR5 photos as well as 4K 60 video recording and Dolby Vision video. Now moving on to the front-facing camera. The front-facing camera is actually a 12 megapixel sensor with an aperture of f1.9 and supports of first generation portrait mode and has 4K 60 video recording. So why not? I'm actually going to do a camera test on this iPhone 16e. Okay guys, over here is the night video sample. Unfortunately, it is really cold, about -5 degrees Celsius. So why not? I'm actually going to go into my car and actually grab some chips. That should be it. Okay guys, over here is the video sample of the iPhone 16e. In 4K 60. Now you can actually pause the video and actually move on. But as you can see, the video is definitely quite good, even for a single camera lens. Okay guys, over here is actually the front-facing video samples in 4K 60. Now over here is the outdoor sample for the iPhone 16e. In 4K 60. The very last thing I'm going to talk about is the dimensions, as the iPhone 16e does have the exact same dimensions as the 14, but is actually 5 grams lighter at 167 grams versus 172 grams. Also, there's no camera button as well on the 16e. Now over here is a conclusion. In my opinion, I do believe $600 is kind of on the expensive side, but I do believe this is sort of an okayish value, but you do get a lot less features than that of the regular 16, which actually costs $200 more. And despite the fact $600 is sort of an okayish value, to be honest, because the 16 actually costs $200 more. In fact, I would believe this phone would sell like hotcakes if it costed around $450 to $500, according to the rumored prices. And the reason why I do believe this is actually an okayish value for $600 is because you do have the new A18 processor, which means this phone is definitely going to be a lot faster than many of the other phones in the same price bracket. You even have a bigger battery at 3961 milliamp hours versus the 16 with 3561 milliamp hours. And you also have Apple Intelligence as well. However, for $600, you could almost certainly buy, like, say, a 15 Pro, a used 15 Pro on Swapper. Now, a fair condition unlocked variant would actually set you back $575. And even though you definitely do not have the smell of the new iPhone, nor the 100% battery capacity, and you do have some scratches, instead, the 15 Pro actually does include a lot more features, such as the 120Hz screen, 3 cameras instead of 1, as well as several different perks. However, the biggest disadvantage between the 15 Pro and the 16e is for sure the processor, as the 15 Pro only has the A17, whilst this actually has the A18. Overall, I do believe the iPhone 16e is actually a slight upgrade from the 14. However, the 14 actually does have several features of which the 16e actually doesn't, such as the ultra-wide camera, action mode, ultra-wideband support, millimeter wave support, and MagSafe support. And the iPhone 16e is sort of an upgrade from that of the 15 in some areas, say Apple Intelligence and processor upgrades, but definitely camera downgrades for sure. And this phone, the 16e, is definitely a slight downgrade from that of the 16, but you do get a lot of the same features, especially the same processor, for about $200 less. Okay guys, that sums up the review. Thank you guys for watching. Please give a big thumbs up, subscribe for more videos, and I'm gonna see you guys soon.